Welcome into the Bucks on the Pond podcast. It is Monday night. It is a little past 9 o'clock. Steve and I go here. Jonathan Wagner, Scott Lorbatcher alongside. Full disclosure, my 3-year-old son's walking around upstairs, so he may bust in at any moment. And if that happens, Wags and Scott will take over part of the show until I get that settled. But regardless, we're talking ECU baseball. And it was a rough weekend for the Pirates. A good midweek. ECU wins 2 in a row. Things set up well for the weekend, and then really just kind of I put in the title shocking weekend. I mean, I think that's fair. To get swept at home for the first time in 6 years is pretty shocking. So massive change in how everybody feels about the program. I'm sure there's a lot. I shouldn't say the program, but maybe just the team, and I don't know. We'll get into big picture stuff, I'm sure. We've got a lot to talk about. ECU, the season's not over. But I put in the title, how does this affect postseason chances? We'll get into all that. That number's behind it with 6 regular season weeks remaining. But we always start, gentlemen, with our overall thoughts. We'll do that. We will start with Scott Lorbatcher. We'll give you first dibs this week.
I appreciate that. I would just say that game Saturday was maybe one of the worst efforts I think I've ever seen out of an ECU baseball team. It's really disappointing. You're at home in front of the people that, especially in the year of NIL, right, where not only are these the people that pay for your scholarships, in the past, but now, they're putting money in your pocket. And to see that the lack of effort this weekend was really disappointing. The errors, the mental lapses, the base running mistakes, just a full-on just bad effort, and just a terrible weekend. And coming off of Tuesday and Wednesday, I was really excited to see this team go into the weekend and have a chance to really have a great week. Maybe start getting in the conversation about how good can they be, how much can they build on the 13-2 they went over those 15 games, against bad competitions, but they were winning, and it was just a huge letdown. So a really frustrating weekend for ECU baseball. In years past, when you get to the 9th inning, down 1, down 2, whatever it might be, you've really felt like ECU had a chance to win. And I just didn't see that same sort of energy come out. And this is something I noticed in the Memphis series, and it's kind of continued to stack up. But it feels like the teams that we're playing play with more energy and have more energy in their dugout than we do right now. And I think that's a huge problem going forward, and something that really needs to get fixed.
Wags, your overall thoughts on the weekend or week?
Yeah, it was one of the most frustrating weekends, maybe the most frustrating weekend I think I've ever had watching this team. And, I think, again, it's something I say every week, but this year, just given where this team is and what it wants to achieve, the margin of error is just non-existent. And it was like that before this weekend. So to me, in past years, it feels like, ECU is always going to take care of their business on the weekends. And you're left wondering at the end of the year, it's like, man, what happened? What happens if we win some of those midweek games? Like, how high of a seed are we? And this year, you finally won the midweek. I said coming in, this UNCW game was so big, because if you can find a way to win this game and then win the finale later on this season against UNCW, you pick up another solid series win in a way, and you did it. You evened it up at 1-1. You found a way to beat Elon in a tight game, but so you go in 2-0, and it kind of felt like, I still think this team, even if they would have gone 3-0 this weekend, I still think they're, a little bit of ways from, the top 25 talks and being in the tournament picture. But you go 3-0 and you feel like you're a heck of a lot closer than you ever thought you would be probably this year. And now it's all come crashing down. So it's frustrating. The team didn't show up, and it's disappointing because they had every reason to. The weather was pretty good, I think, and you were at home. And again, I think you should have won, because I think you're the better team, or you should have been the better team. If, like Scott said, you didn't make all those damn errors. and shoot yourself in the foot, and that's the most frustrating part. I do think they beat themselves, even on Saturday. So I was impressed by FAU. They were a little better than I thought they would look, but in the end, ECU lost because ECU didn't show up, and that's the most frustrating part.
Good thoughts, guys. I've written down 6 bullet points here. I'll see if I can get to all of them on my thoughts on the weekend. And I'll start with kind of not making excuses for the team, but just kind of giving like some general thoughts to balance it before I talk about ECU side of this. The first kind of goes back to we have been spoiled to a degree. 6 years since ECU got swept in conference play at home. I mean, that is an amazing feat in itself. Obviously, the conference has been down. That doesn't excuse what happened this weekend, but the standard's been raised because of that. So that's why everybody's so mad, because this doesn't happen. This shouldn't happen based upon history and what the program has done. Not that it's never going to happen, but that's why you kind of have this reaction. Number 2, FAU is much better than I thought they were going to be. The conference this year is much better than I thought they were going to be. Again, that doesn't mean they should have came in here and swept ECU, but they did. Number 3 for me, bad luck. There was a ton of infield hits, ton of bloop hits, and on FAU side, they capitalized on that with some big swings afterwards, and I thought that played a major role in how many runs they scored. Number 4, all that said, ECU right now not playing good enough baseball, not good enough, inconsistent on the mound, throwing strikes. The offense right now is just inconsistent up and down the lineup. Number 5, the issues at home right now is a major problem. 13-8 isn't a bad record, but if you compare that to what ECU's done, and as Scott pointed to, the lack of comebacks at home, that's a problem. That really we've seen this team achieve so many wins in those moments in the past. And number 6, the season's not over. We'll get more into the postseason picture, but certainly a huge impact on ECU's potential at-large hope. So 6 bullet points. We can go more in depth on all those over the course of the next hour. We'll now pitch it to Scott Lorbatcher, what we learned over the course of the week.
I think we've learned that if you don't play good defense, bad things happen to you. And, that's not really something we learned this week, but it's something that we've learned time and time again with this team. You look at the first inning at Duke, right? You go up 2-0. You have a ton of momentum. Bottom of the first, regular fly ball just drops in the middle of the outfield, and the game turns. Duke gets the momentum back and ends up winning that game. And if you keep giving teams 4 and 5 outs in an inning, you're going to get hurt against teams that can hit. And FAU, Duke, Wilmington, in Fayetteville, those are teams that can hit. And you keep giving them outs, you're going to give up way too many runs. It's the same thing as walks for pitchers. And those types of mistakes are not stuff that we're accustomed to under Cliff Godwin as far as Pirate baseball. And, really the caliber of baseball that is played, college baseball in this state, it's rare to see teams struggle with kind of the basics, not walking guys, getting bunts down, doing the right things on the bases. You don't see that a ton in North Carolina collegiate baseball across all of these teams. And it's surprising to see the amount of it that we've had this year. And, I know Cliff said we're going to get it right, but you're halfway through the year almost. At a certain point, you didn't get it right because the test is over. If you get the last 5 questions right, it doesn't matter what it doesn't matter because you missed the first 40. So, the turning point is now. You've run out of time. If you're going to get it right, you got to get it right this weekend in Charlotte. Tuesday against NC State, that's a really good team, come off a really big win. I can understand not winning that game. You can't go out there and lose it 14-1, but you need to play well against NC State, and you dang sure well got to play your best in Charlotte because that's a team that's gonna want to beat you. And in the American this year, if you give teams multiple chances, they're gonna hurt you. And we're done with the Memphises and Rice, so you got to figure it out now.
Wags, your thoughts. What did you learn?
Yeah, I learned that the rant I was going to go on last week is still valid, so I'm going to use this opportunity to do it now. And it's that ECU has a lineup construction and a lineup management problem, and it's on Cliff Godwin's shoulders. And for me, in past years, I think you've always had that guy in your lineup. Your Carter Cunningham, your Jacob Jenkins Cowart when he was on, your Connor Norby's, all those kinds of guys. First of all, you don't have that this year because I don't think Dixon Williams is to that level of player. And that's not his fault. And you have him and Braden Burris. Colby's come on. But to me, this stupid idea of putting a slap hitter who can't hit no matter who it is in your cleanup spot and having a revolving door, like this past weekend, it was Roger Vergara. And no offense to Roger Vergara, but I don't want him in the lineup, let alone hitting cleanup. And to me, you have your three best hitters hitting 1, 2, 3, but your best hitter the last 2 weeks has been Braxton Trammell. So you need to put him in cleanup because if you get your guys on base early on, you want your guy who you trust the most to drive him in. And lately, to me, that has been Braxton Trammell. And this is another rant that we can go on, but if Braxton Trammell was in the lineup, stop taking him out in the fourth, fifth inning. We haven't seen that as much lately, but we have seen a lot to where you have a guy in your starting lineup typically hitting in the heart of the order, and I think Cliff does too much. He pinch runs in the fifth, and he uses the excuse that it's going to turn into a defensive game. You want to improve defensively. I get that, but in the end, this team isn't good enough to overcome having crappy bats in the lineup in the seventh, eighth, and ninth innings. And that's what we have every single game now because we overdo it every time. And it pisses me off, and I was laughing at me. But, for me, I think you just need to readjust. First of all, starting at the top, I think I would move Braden Burris back to leadoff. And I thought that moving Dixon up to leadoff and having Burris as your hottest hitter behind him would kind of open Dixon up. But to me, I think Dixon's looked a little worse the past couple of weeks. So I would switch that back, go back to Burris 1, Dixon 2, Colby's fine at the 3, and then you have Trammell 4, and you got to figure it out from there. And that's the issue. That's why I will give a little bit of grace is that the rest of the lineup hasn't been very good. But, you have Walker Barron who can hit in that 5 spot, and then the rest you just have to figure out. Austin Irby's shown flashes, hasn't been great lately, but Keenan Bowman's been good lately. But again, Keenan Bowman shouldn't be hitting cleanup. He hit cleanup a couple of times. And it's overthinking. And I think it's time to stop overthinking and just do what logic tells you gives you the best chance to win. And if you genuinely believe that, batting Roger Vergara cleanup is giving you the best chance to win, then I'm never going to agree with you, and this team's never going to win.
All right, Wags. I like it, man. Not holding back. And look, I mean, Cliff has had unconventional cleanup hitters the majority of his, I don't want to say majority, but at least some of his tenure. Like Lane Hoover used to hit cleanup, but like I don't know if that makes it right or not. At times it's worked, at times it hasn't. And obviously, look, the thing is when you've got Vergara or Bowman hitting cleanup, especially I think it was Sunday, Vergara was hitting cleanup, right?
Yeah.
And, first inning, he comes up with a guy on second and 2 outs. And, not saying Braxton Trammell would have got a hit there, but Vergara flies out. The next inning, Trammell hits a home run. So, maybe that's a 2-run homer instead of a solo shot the next inning. So, I get it trying to break up your lineup, but, putting a guy who has barely hit recently cleanup is a little head-scratching. And if it works, Cliff looks like a genius. We're not talking about it. Obviously, it didn't. And certainly a fair question. And the other thing, too, in the Friday game, I know, again, this situation come up on Sunday where Trammell didn't get the hit off the FAU closer, but let's say he saw him Friday instead of having to pinch hit Jack Herring for Keenan Bowman with the game on the line, maybe you get a different result there. So just fair thoughts for sure. What I learned and kind of going back to what we talked about earlier is just ECU right now doesn't have that home magic. And I kind of said that to Coach Godwin after the game. It just feels like y'all are missing that. And they just haven't had a big moment at home this year. And I texted you guys on Sunday. I was like, man, this team needs a moment right here, or things look very sketchy. And I thought for a second we were about to get it. It didn't work out. And Pirates are now 4-8, I believe, against teams that are over 500 at home. So that's a record that usually is at least reversed in the past, and that's why ECU right now is struggling to have marquee wins, which we'll get into with the postseason resume as well. All right, again, Pirates lose the series, get swept to FAU. Let's get to some of the questions. A lot of comments about people in the chat. Brandon Carr says, hey, Casey Ramaley says, not going to get much easier. Wolfpack coming off miracle comeback over UVA. Charlotte's red hot coming off 4-1 week. Going to be an uphill battle. I should add, by the way, guys, Cliff Godwin, I wrote an article on this, did say they had a team meeting today. And, not shocking. Coach and his team, I think, have always – we didn't get a ton of details. Most of that is internal, as it should be. But, again, we've kind of reached a point where this doesn't happen a lot. So naturally, you're going to address it. It should be addressed. Would really love to know from a player perspective who stepped up, because I think we've kind of talked about it, guys. Who are going to be the leaders from a player perspective on this year's team? A coaching staff can try to lead, but reality, you're going to have some players step up. So, we'll see how they respond on Tuesday. Scott, like you said, you're over at the halfway point now. It's kind of now or never to respond.
Yeah, and if you don't respond on Tuesday, you got a chance to get, if 14-1 was bad on Saturday, and I heard Cliff say that, well, it could have been not as bad, but we wouldn't have been able to use, a guy on Sunday or something like that. So, but NC State can hit, and we've really struggled with teams that can hit this year because they have patient approaches, and we walk guys when teams have patient approaches. So, I mean, they need a get right moment. And, there's a team to get right against that can, not only give you momentum as a team, but give the fan base momentum going forward as far as like a marquee win, kind of a pound your chest moment. If we beat NC State in what is, kind of considered a down year, and then kind of are on the flip side of that against Charlotte, where that's a team that is going to really want to beat us. If you go 3-1 this week, the momentum's back, right? Like it can turn that quick. We're still a game out of first place for the conference title, with the two teams in front of us still coming up. Everything is still right in front of us, but it's just like Wag said, when the lineup management is bad. There was multiple times this weekend where the 4-hole hitter comes up with guys on base, and you have a guy that is not a doubles threat in that spot. And, no offense to Boucher, because I think he would be a valuable piece on this team. But we're 11 years in to Cliff Godwin, and we've had one guy that I would consider a Omaha team caliber shortstop in that time, and that was Agnos. Other than that, it's been guys that are okay, good college players, but not, a potential big leaguer. And then you look at Friday night. I saw somebody mention Charlotte's Friday night guy. FAU has a dude on Friday nights. UTSA has a dude on Friday nights. Rice has a dude on Friday nights. And what I mean by dude is a guy that has a big league arm, right? As much as I love Norby, if he's your Saturday guy, this team is infinitely better. And we thought maybe Sean Jenkins would be that guy. Pruitt looked really good on Sunday, but, we've had so many weeks to figure out a rotation. And then we go into every weekend and watch the teams we play have guys go out there and throw 100 pitches because they have legitimate starters with legitimate starter stuff 3 times. And then we're struggling to find a second guy right now. And that's really frustrating, when there's so many resources available and you have a program that has a huge fan base with people who show up, right? You have NIL money in a way that our peers in our conference don't. We don't have what NC State has. We don't have what UNC has, but we have more than what FAU has, and we have more than what Charlotte has. And you have a winning program to come to. You have everything in place to be a marquee program year in, year out in this version of college athletics in a way that really no other East Carolina sports program has. You have all the resources. You have a coach that's paid far and away more than the other coaches in this league, and deservedly so. So the excuses of, well, we got to learn to be better and we got to be better, it kind of wears thin when you have the tools to be better year in, year out. I don't want to hear that teams are older. You make a choice to be younger. And now we have some young guys that are really, really good. Braxton Trammell, Braden Burst, those are really, really good young players. But the days of having a guy that sticks around for 3 and 4 years are probably gone. And we've seen that with the Thorndikes that just leave the program because they want to get to play. And the Colby Rasmussen. Like, if you had Rasmussen on this team, he's probably playing shortstop, and that's a bat in the lineup. But he's not here. So you got to go out and find guys that can fill in and be important impact players on this team. And I know Cliff has said we don't want to build our team around the portal, and you don't always have to do that. Next year, I don't think you would need to do that because you have guys that are going to be stalwarts. But this year, you probably needed to do that.
Yeah, that 22 recruiting class or whatever year it was Dixon came in with, I mean, that we talked about that. That's the main reason he's used here. Like, you can't live in the portal. I do agree. You probably could have done more the last year or two in the portal trying to land an impact bat, but you also need money for that too. But I don't know. I have mixed feelings on it. I do think maybe what happened in 22 with Rasmussen, Thorndike, those guys not playing a lot and transferring, maybe we're seeing, the young guys play now. So hopefully that doesn't happen again. But it's coming at a cost too, as we're seeing a lot of growing pains from such a young roster. All right. A lot of comments here. We'll touch on the shortstop situation. Brian Wallace says Boucher strikes out a decent amount, but showed this week he can get a big hit in a big moment. Why have him bunt with 2 outs and a runner on in the 8th of Game 3? Very frustrating. Cliff Godwin did say they teach the guys to, if you're going to bunt in that situation, I guess it was a called bunt with the third baseman playing back, you either get it down the line or get it foul. Essentially, if you're going to bunt there, you don't want to put it as close to the mound as he did. I think the third baseman still got it coming in. It was an easy play, relatively speaking. Either way, I agree. Would have liked to see him swing away there. Yes, he could have struck out, but also a chance he runs into it. Somebody asked also about trying somebody else at shortstop. I did ask Cliff Godwin about that today, and he backed Boucher, as you would expect him to do. He's his player. Said, I'm not thinking about making a change at shortstop, and I'm paraphrasing, I don't know the exact quote, but essentially said he's going to get better. We're going to work with him to get better. So it sounds like Boucher will continue at shortstop. Wags, would you like to see a different option there, or what are your thoughts on the shortstop position at this point?
Yeah, with Boucher, I think I'm kind of just of the opinion that he is what he is at this point. And, with his bat specifically, he has shown that he is a guy who can come through with a big hit in a big moment, and he can hit you a walk-off grand slam like he did this week. And he's also shown that he can, and usually this on the first pitch of an at-bat, if he's off, he's off. If he's having an off day at the plate, he's not rosterable. If he's having a good day at the plate, he's a cleanup caliber hitter. And there's no in between, it seems like, and that's the frustrating part. But we've, kind of back to Scott's point, we haven't had a shortstop that's really Omaha caliber outside of Agnos, but Cliff's always stuck with his guys at shortstop. And if you stuck with Joey Barini as long as you did, I think they're going to stick with Alex Boucher. No offense to Joey, but, he does have a game-changing arm at shortstop, but you got to stop the balls that are hit right to you. And you got to make the easy plays, and you're making the easy plays look extremely difficult. And this pitching staff is not as good as we all thought it was at once. You cannot start putting base runners on with a pitching staff that loves to give up a free pass as much as humanly possible. So would I like to see someone else? Yes. But at the same time, it's what if we get that good Boucher day? And even if it's hitting ninth, to me, it's just he has the potential, huge emphasis on the potential to be all right. That's as far as I'm willing to go. But I'm okay with having him in the 9 hole. I'd feel a lot better if, some of the guys in front of him were hitting a little better. If Austin Irby got hot again, I think I'd feel a lot better lineup-wise about keeping Boucher in and kind of having that home run or bust. And we all knew he was home run or bust coming in, but I think it's a little bit more extreme than what we thought. But it's frustrating. Again, if a ball's hit right to you, I don't care how hard it is. I don't care what type of bounce it is. You've got to find a way to make a play if you're going to play shortstop at this level, and you're not hitting at the level that you need to either.
Yeah, with Boucher, I mean, I'm fine having him in the lineup as a bat because, like you said, you need some juice, especially in Clark LeClaire this time of the year. You get the ball in the air, like there's a good chance it's going to leave the yard. I would like to see him use the whole field a little more, but there's no doubt he's got power. And, the thing about shortstop, we knew when he was recruited, he's not a true natural shortstop. He's got a third baseman, first baseman build. And look, he's got a great arm, but his range is just, a scout will tell you it's adequate at best. Obviously, he's, I think, maybe a little bit now in his own head with some of the routine errors because he showed he can actually make a nice play on that ball on the short hop on a line drive, and then he threw it away. And also want to point out, look, it wasn't helped out a ton at first base on some potential hops this weekend, but, the error gets charged to the shortstop in that situation. I don't know, guys. I'm kind of at the point I would like to see Braden Burris get a shot to play shortstop. I don't think it's going to happen. And again, like he doesn't necessarily profile as a shortstop, probably more as a second baseman, but like when's the last time we had a shortstop playing shortstop who profiled as a shortstop? It's been a while. So I don't know. Scott, your thoughts here?
Yeah, that guy's pitching in the Rockies organization now. Yeah, I think we talked about it before the year that it really feels like we have 3 second, third basemen on our infield, and we've just had a hole at shortstop. And quite frankly, Parker Bird should be the shortstop on this baseball team. Obviously, what happened 3 years ago is a huge tragedy, and definitely, that whole recruiting class I think was affected by it. And if Parker Bird is healthy, you're talking about probably maybe an All-American shortstop on this baseball team. So we have recruited one. To give Cliff some credit, it just circumstances unfortunately didn't work out there. So we have to be better defensively up the middle. Center field, shortstop, second base, catcher. Those are your 4 defensive positions where I think defense matters more than offense. Straight up the middle. The corners, give me offense all day. If Boucher was playing third and he had 4 or 5 errors over the course of 2 months, I wouldn't care. But you're playing shortstop, you got to make the plays because an error at shortstop sometimes can mean not only that you didn't get 1 out, it could mean you didn't get 2 outs. And we just can't have that right now. Not with this team. There's too many balls put in play against our pitching staff to kick it around. If we had, a Trey Savage and a Wisenhunt in the rotation that were getting a ton of strikeouts, the story's different. But as many balls that we haven't put in play, we got to make plays defensively behind our staff.
Yeah, can't be giving up 4 or 5 outs an inning for sure. Chuck says, just tuned in. Any word on Brett Antolik? What happened to Riley Johnson? Is he done this year? Will he come back next year? So, Tolik's still having hip discomfort. And, at this point, I don't expect him back. I haven't been told that. But just if you're still experiencing discomfort and getting checked out by doctors this time of year, it's hard to imagine you making it back. Ryan Towers was supposed to throw this past weekend. Haven't heard a formal update, or this past week, I should say. Haven't heard a formal update there. We'll see if he can get back by May, but at this point, it's almost like, does he just medically redshirt? Riley Johnson, according to Cliff Godwin, tweaked a hamstring. Unlikely he will play Tuesday. Unlikely he will play this weekend. I feel horrific for Riley Johnson with the injuries. He's clearly trying to do everything he can to make it back. And, you had the shoulder surgery, then he had the midsection deal, now the hamstring, and from my understanding, he played in the UNCW game, which is after the halfway point. So you cannot medically redshirt unless he were to get some sort of waiver. So, and at this point, guys, his body clearly is having trouble with the rigors of playing sports. So does he really want to even come back and try again next year? I don't know. I can't speak for Riley. That's up to him, but I don't even know if that's a possibility. So you've had some bad injury luck this season on top of what's happening, Wags, which hasn't helped. But the Riley Johnson situation definitely frustrating for everybody involved, but especially Riley.
Yeah, absolutely. And, what you just said is a good point, too. I think before, when we were kind of figuring out, is he going to make it back by the NCW game? And the understanding was he would utilize the extra year if he got it. But it just kind of the human part of you has to wonder, he does make it back and he gets back in the starting lineup and then he hurts something else and now he hurt something else. And now he's healed from the first injury, his shoulders, and then he had the abdominal strain or whatever it was. And then he recovered from that and his shoulder popped out again. Then he was good enough to get back in the lineup and he hurt his hamstring. And it's just brutal. I feel for him because that's a glue type guy. And, we talk about from whichever way you want to, defensively up the middle, he's a difference maker, obviously. And I think having him in the outfield gives you a little more flexibility to, try a Braden Burris, a shortstop, if you want to try that. And to me, that conversation comes down to, would you rather have, Boucher at short when you can move Burris around, or would you rather take Burris out or take Burris to shortstop, take Boucher out if you do that? And then it's like, if Riley's not there, it's like, man, who's going to play center field for you? Like Peltier, his bat hasn't been great. So it's just a whole domino effect of just bad luck. And it sucks. I feel for him. But the lineup too, the lineup, like I said earlier, I don't think the lineup has that guy, that top dog. And Riley's not that. But if Riley's at the top of the order being Riley Johnson and being his own top dog, then it just makes you so much more flexible. It lengthens your lineup a lot. Then I think you have a formidable top 5 in your lineup. So this season is going to be, no matter how it goes down the stretch, full of what ifs. And again, I feel for Riley because there's nobody that wants him on the field more than him.
No doubt. All right. The comment section is just going wild. Brian Wallace says, is it frustrating anyone else that Ryan Towers is dancing around but not playing? I mean, I don't care. I mean, if he wants to dance, let him dance. Like, it has nothing to do with his injury. Do y'all have any differing thoughts here?
I'm more frustrated that he's dancing around while we get our ass kicked by FAU. But, I mean, that's not his fault. He's not out there. I mean, it's an arm injury. It doesn't – I mean – throwing a baseball and dancing are slightly different, I would say.
Oh, for sure. But hey, there's some that think because he's dancing, he's medically cleared, which isn't really how it works.
Well, maybe we should send Riley Johnson to 519 and see if he's dancing out there, and if he is, get his ass on the field.
All right, ECU NPC. Says, why can Charlotte find these guys, but we can't? Maybe it's Cliffy. I do want to keep some perspective here. Like, all right, would you rather have Charlotte's baseball program or ECU's baseball program? Yeah, Charlotte's having a decent year. I'm taking ECU, and I'll take ECU even if they lose this weekend series. So, like, yeah, it's frustrating to lose to FAU. ECU has still been extremely consistent over the course of the last decade. Will that carry over into the rest of the season and the future? That's a bigger issue or bigger topic issue, which we're discussing. But, like, Charlotte, we'll see what happens this weekend. But they still have a lot to prove to start flexing over ECU baseball. All right. Where was that here? All right. What was up with Cliff Godwin visiting the mound this weekend without his hat is what Jeff wants to know. I guess he just lost his hat. I mean,
hey, look, I'm a very superstitious guy. And when you started off 0-2 in those hats, I thought, maybe it's time to hang him up and you go back to the purple hats. So maybe Cliff was, reading my mind and he said, I'm going to send a message to this entire stadium that all the bad juju was out of here. And I'm going to the mound with my bald head showing and trying, but then they were back on Sunday and it didn't work. But that was funny. I think we all kind of looked and it's like, Cliff, what are you doing?
Yeah, I mean, there were bigger issues at hand, but I would like to know at some point what was up with that. My guess is he just misplaced his hat or something. All right, let's get into the postseason discussion, guys. Obviously, if you had to handicap it today, the odds of ECU getting an at-large bid are much less than they were going into the weekend. I don't know what the fan grass percentage would be if they could put an odd on it like they do with all the MLB playoff odds, but I'm guessing it would be low. ECU currently 90th in the RPI. They've actually moved up a couple spots today. I'm not sure what's happened, but they went from 92 to 90. They are 20-13 overall, 6-3 in the American. As Scott said earlier, a game out of first place. Charlotte is 89th. You play them on the road, and then you play NC State. There are some good opportunities ahead. I mean, the way I look at it is you just have – I mean, you didn't have zero margin for error, but I think we all said you had slim margin for error going into the FAU series. Now you have, I think, zero margin for error in terms of you can't lose another weekend series. UTSA is 27 in RPI. USF is 44. You finish the season with those two series. So let's say you win the next 4 series, which is not easy to do, by the way. I would think you would at least have a shot going into the final few weeks of the regular season. How would you – I don't know. What are your thoughts on this, guys? We'll get each of your thoughts. I guess we'll start with Wags.
Yeah, I think it's also important to note that UTSA is 27 and USF is 44 right now. And
yes,
as we've seen time and time again with this crappy baseball conference, that can change in a week. Both of those teams can go out and lose their next series and boom, they're mid-50s. And then no matter what they do the next weekend, they're down 60s, 70. So that can all change very quickly. But, as things stand now, it's not only do you need to be pretty much perfect down the stretch, you need a heck of a lot of help. And I'm very firmly standing on the table of you have to win the conference tournament to get in. I think your at-large chances, as things currently stand, are done. And that sucks. But to me, that's just how I see it. And I did my field of 64 today, and ECU wasn't in it. They weren't on the bubble. Your RPI is 92, or at least coming into the day, it was 92. That's not even close to consideration. And that'll improve. I was going to say normalize, but I think, we're kind of normalized right now at this point in the season. But, UTSA and USF were both in my field, which, again, it's just so funny to talk about that, how we've been begging for help from this conference. And, man, let's get that second team in there behind ECU. Oh, guess what? We did this year, except we are number 3. So it sucks. But, looking at it going forward, your RPI opportunities left. Charlotte coming into the day was 89, UAB on the road, both of those on the road, 101, Tulane 128, Wichita 111, and then UTSA 27, USF 44. It's not great. Those last two are solid, and those fringe 100 road series are ones that you have to win those now. But even your midweeks, like NC State's playing well, but their RPI is 54. That'll get better as the season goes on. UNCW, again, you have one more. They're 108. Elon is mid-20s on the road, and Campbell's 100. So your chances to boost your resume come down to the last 2 weekends now, and it sucks. And now we're talking about, last week, I think you can afford to go 2-1 a couple times down the stretch, and then you're going to need some help still. But if you go 2-1 every weekend before this past weekend, you're feeling pretty good. But now I think you're at a point to where you have to get your RPI into, at a minimum, top 50 to be in consideration for at-large. And all of this that I just said is not even considering the potential anchors you're going to face again in Clearwater in that crappy tournament. So I don't feel good. It's not over, like you said, but to me, you need to be perfect and you need a lot of help, or you just need to win the conference tournament. And right now, I don't trust either of those things to happen.
Yeah, I mean, fair points for sure. I mean, look, ECU's at-large situation took a major hit with the sweep. I do think at least you have the RPI anchors out of the way in the regular season with Memphis and Rice. Now, the problem is every team you're facing is as talented as FAU. So, you play what you did this past weekend, and none of this conversation matters. But I do think there's at least you could make the argument you can get yourself back into the mix if you win all these series, which is easier said than done. Scott, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, up until this week, I had been doing our weekend opponent thread and kind of going over what they did, how their RPIs went up and down. Right now, I don't think it matters anymore. To be an at-large team, you have to perform like one. We haven't. So the midweeks that we have coming up, there's still some RPI anchors there. Campbell and Wilmington at home, as good as those programs are, top 100-ish, but you lose that's a quad 4 loss at home. So that's if you don't win. So you have to win those games. You have to play really well at home, which we have done in the past, but have not done as much this year. And then you have to go 2-1 on the series on the road and probably sweep the weekends against your conference opponents at home. And that's tough to do against anybody. And we talk about how much this league has improved. A lot of teams now have legitimate Friday night guys. Makes it really hard to win on Friday night. We've seen in the past teams kind of sell out to win a game, especially on Friday night against ECU. So if that continues to happen, they may burn through a whole bullpen, but they won a road game at East Carolina, so it makes a difference in the standings. I just think it is conference tournament or bust. And as far as what we have to do going forward is we have to put ourselves in the best position possible to have a solid path through the conference tournament, and that's finishing first or second in this league. Because I think the difference between the first 5 teams and the next 5 teams is pretty significant.
All right. Dustin Bell says, are midweek games even weighted that heavily? In terms of the RPI, I mean, each individual game counts the same. Now, obviously, depending on who you're playing and the RPI of the opponent, that has a varying factor. But as those guys mentioned, like Wilmington and Campbell are not big games. State is just inside the top 60, but that's still a quad 3 home game. If they get inside the top 50, that would be a quad 2. I do think it is kind of – this is a whole separate discussion, but some of these quads need to be like reconfigured based on home and away. Like if you play an away game against the 120th RPI team, that is a quad 2 game. But if you play that same game at home, that is a quad 4. Like, this seems a little egregious.
And then in college baseball, there's like 40 programs that have home environments.
Yeah.
Like the difference in playing Elon on the road and playing at home for ECU is zero. Like when we played at Duke, it was a home game. Like for all it was a home game in Durham. Like it just I get it. Like there's an emotional difference in batting last and all that kind of stuff. But when we play in Fayetteville, it's a neutral site game, but it's usually more ECU fans than it is anybody else. So I do think I don't know that you need a quad 4. I think you have your top 25 team should be quad 1. Your 25 to 50 should be quad 2. 51 to 75 should be 3. And then if you're outside the top 75, then that's just quad 4.
You're just a game, yeah.
It's just a game. Like it no longer really matters at that point. Because you can't tell me there's some discernible difference between the 210th ranked team and the 301st ranked team. I just don't believe that.
So if you guys are out on at-large chances, which look, I can't really disagree. I mean, unless ECU goes on some insane run, it's hard to envision it. At what point do you, I'm not going to say punt the regular season, but just really start making sure you don't overwork these pitchers? Like Ethan Young clearly was on fumes on Sunday. And, every time you throw him 2-3 times a week, that's just a better chance he's not going to be at his best for the postseason. So does that process start now? Do you give it another week to say, all right, we're just going to really prep now to space these guys out, make it as best as possible for the postseason? How do y'all feel about that, Wags?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I think the state of the rotation as every week this season is another good conversation. Ethan Norby's still Ethan Norby, and he's a guy I trust on Friday nights. And he hasn't looked as dominant the past 2 weeks as he was, but I think we are starting to see that kind of It's different going out there and pitching on Friday nights. And you might just looking at it on the surface, last year he's out there pitching every other day just about and throwing multiple innings every other day every time he comes in. You might think, man, just having one day where you're pitching, it's probably easier on the arm. But just the pressure of going out there every Friday night, it's the first time he's pitched that much in that type of capacity too. But either way, Norby's a guy I trust. But, Brad Pruitt starting on Sunday, it kind of made me think it's like maybe that's something you stick with and you start him on Saturdays moving forward, or you save him for Sunday. Realistically, and Cliff said this earlier in your interview with him, is it's probably still going to stick to Norby, TBA. And if you don't use Young on Friday, maybe Young starts Saturday. If you don't use Pruitt on either day, then maybe he starts Sunday. So, but it's a conversation to where you want to find starting roles, and I think right now you have one starter. And if we're talking about conference tournament or bust, you're not coming close to winning the conference tournament. You're probably not winning 2 games in the conference tournament with one starter. So I think it's one of those things that I'd at least strongly consider. I probably wouldn't do it with both Pruitt and Young. I think I would probably lean Pruitt as maybe you move him to be a starter moving forward. And then you still have Young as kind of your do-it-all guy out of the bullpen, come out multiple days if he has to. He's going to be the Danny Beal. He's going to tire. He's not always going to be his sharpest because that's just the nature of the beast. And he's going to pitch a lot either way. But you still need someone you trust out of the bullpen. And Jake Hunter's been another guy who's been good. And maybe you go back to him on Sunday. If you have a weekend rotation of Norby, Brad Pruitt, and Jake Hunter, you have Ethan Young out of the bullpen, and you don't feel good about the bullpen. You have Sean Jenkins there, and he's another guy that potentially can start a conference tournament game. And if he's good, he's giving you multiple innings. He's a guy who can come in late in the game potentially. If he's off, he's going to give you an out, and you move on to the next guy. But I think, honestly, I've talked myself out of it. Moving forward, I think maybe the more important thing is, as opposed to getting length out of some of these other guys and getting them settled for those kinds of roles, it's using those opportunities for a guy like Gabe Beschloss, Ian White, and Jackson DiLorenzo. I'm not personally high on a guy like D'Lo anymore, but again, you're going to have guys step up. So now is your chance. We've been saying it for years. Throw guys out there in new situations. See if they can do it. You might lose some games, and I know you can't afford to lose games right now, but I don't think you're going to win games with how it currently is anyways. So to me, I think you're in a position to where you have to try something else at the very least, because what you have been doing is clearly not working.
Your thoughts, Scott?
Yeah, I think the way that the schedule is constructed, it was hard the first 4 weeks to make adjustments, right? Your first week is what it is, George Mason. Then you play UNC. What's really hard to get a grasp on how your rotation translates from North Carolina to the American Athletic Conference, right? It's a Omaha caliber team, and you're not facing that in conference play. Next week is the LeClaire Classic, which is a hard time. You're facing 3 different teams. It's a very important tournament to the coaching staff. So it's hard to make changes there. Then you get Coastal, another top 25 team that's maybe a regional host candidate. But then after that, you get 3 weekends of William and Mary, Rice, and Memphis. Teams that we went 9-0 against. I think there was when you should have said, we have to figure out who can start on Saturday and who can start on Sunday. And by the time you get to this past weekend, it should have been established. These are our 3 guys, and we're going to ride them out unless something drastic happens the rest of the year. And I think Norby's obviously one. Pruitt has shown he can be a guy, which I would have said about Nick Moran like 2 weeks ago. So, it's hard to say, but it would have been nice to see Pruitt start a game against Memphis or a game against Rice and see if he could have stacked it up week over week. And then Jake Hunter, is another guy that I think has earned the opportunity to be in the rotation again. He's pitched really well. I know we've kind of used him um, as a guy that can give you length to finish out a game. But I think those are your three guys right now. It's Norby, Pruitt, and Hunter. And then, like we said, you got to figure out. You have the rest of the season to figure out who can close games and who can give you length and who can come in tight spots and get it done. Now, anything's possible. This team can go on a run. I mean, the Nats beat the Dodgers tonight, so anything can happen, right? I just figured I'd get that in there.
Had a shot at me, didn't you?
But this is certainly not the week to sell. I mean, you have 4 games that matter a whole lot to this fan base. I certainly wouldn't just throw something at the wall this week. I think you got to go with what you know. But after this week, especially if this week doesn't go well, I think you got to name a rotation. I think that is the way that baseball works best, when guys know what role they're going to be in and don't have to go into each game not knowing what they're going to be asked to do. And I think you just got to go with it and say, this is what we have this year, and see how far it takes you. Could be 2016 or it could be 2017.
I do think it is, fair during that early season stretch. I think they thought they were going to have Towers and Tolik back, and just them not getting back really is, I don't want to say screwed them, because you always deal with injuries in sports, but in many ways they just haven't been able to overcome it. And a lot of talk, which I don't disagree with. If you set a rotation, I think when you have guys that know their roles, like Scott said, typically works better. We've seen it work the other way too at times for ECU, but it's unorthodox. A lot of talk about Norby, Pruitt, and Hunter going into the rotation, which sounds good in theory, but then what's your bullpen after Ethan Young? It's just, I mean, if you do that, it's rough. So, but at that point, at least if you're Nick Moran or if you're Ian White, that you're going to be coming in out of the bullpen and not, starting a midweek game or starting a random game on the weekend. Maybe they can get more settled into the role. Maybe it won't matter. I don't know. Maybe they're just not good enough. As we've seen these guys get a lot of chances, and honestly, it's been very inconsistent. And maybe ECU just doesn't have the arms this year. But Pruitt's outing Sunday, man, I was like, and you're not going to be. And I know you get 3 runs, but his stuff was filthy. He looked like a frontline guy. He was 94 to 95, split and slider. I mean, he looked really good. And so it does make you wonder if you get into a situation where you got Norby and Pruitt back to back. Even if it's just that, then maybe you just figure out the third spot from there. But fair thoughts for sure. Jeff says, is it me or does it seem like D'Lo and Winter have regressed from last season? Definitely D'Lo from a command standpoint has been off this year. I do think he's been better lately. Certainly as an opener, he was successful, and it seems like they've gone away from that for now. But, Jaden Winter, I think he'll look good for inning, and then he'll lose it, command or whatever. Senior, I'm fine with him getting in here or there, but I don't know. I just think those guys right now inconsistent, and D'Lo has definitely regressed. Winter, I think, has just kind of been up and down his whole time. Any other guys from the bullpen that have, I don't want to say disappointed, but just kind of we're waiting to see take that next step?
I put Ian White Jr. in that category. I think early in the year we thought he was going to be, kind of a guy that could come in and shut down an inning. And I think he's still just learning how to pitch at this level. But this goes back to the transfer portal conversation. There's guys out there that can throw strikes, that could have contributed to this team. And, obviously Antolik and Towers, we thought were going to be those guys. But, I remember 2 years ago, Campbell had a dude named Grant Nip that caught for them, hit a ton of home runs, and then on a Tuesday night in Bowie's Creek, came in and was throwing 96, 97 out of the bullpen out of nowhere. So there's guys out there that you can find that can come and be contributors on this team. And, it seems to me at times we value stuff over substance, command, command is increasingly important in baseball with how good batters have become at identifying the strike zone. And and not only that, but how good umpires are because they get TrackMan data back. They get feedback on their strike zone. So you're not getting the inch off the plate that maybe you were 5-6 years ago. To me, we have to start valuing command over spin rate and lateral movement and things like that. But I still believe give Jaden Winter 2 years. He may be a super valuable contributor to this bullpen, but not being old enough to have guys that have a Ben Terwilliger mentality where they're going to throw strikes and try to get guys out is really biting this team right now.
All right. Any other things we need to address before we get into our bold predictions? I know we haven't talked a lot of individual standouts. I don't want it to seem like we're just being super negative, which maybe it's coming off that way, but we are in many ways just reacting to what happened. And like I stated at the top of the show, these standards have been set for the program for a reason. ECU's been an incredible, consistent success over the last decade. So when you get swept at home by Florida Atlantic, you're going to have this type of reaction. The standards have been set. Cliff Godwin said today. So I don't know. Any other talking points you guys want to hit on before we get into our look at the week ahead, Wags? We'll start with you.
Yeah, I think I'm crossing my fingers as I said this because the last time I talked really well about this player, he kind of cooled off. But Keenan Bowman stepped up in a big way this week. And he's that guy, again, I don't want him hitting cleanup. I've been there and done that for that rant tonight. I've said all I need to say about
Wags, who do you want in the cleanup spot? Let's just clarify that.
Who do I want in the cleanup spot?
Give me two players. Okay.
I want Braxton Tram. The most obvious answer with the way this lineup's currently constructed as you could ever come up with. And if not him, Walker Barron, just someone who's – let me stop. I was about to say –
I'm fine with John Collins. At least he can run into one.
Rather him than Roger Vergara. No offense.
Roger's probably watching this man, this Wags guy.
I will say, I know we talked about Bowman and Vergara, but I like their skill sets. I do agree. You want a doubles guy or a home run guy in the 4-hole. It would just seem that spot come up too many times with guys on second, and you need a guy that can get a ball in the gap. So
Bowman's a perfect 7-hole type of hitter. But again, he stepped up this week. He had a really good, I think, past couple of weeks, and he hasn't started every game, but when he's come in late in games and we've kind of used those early substitutions, and I've said it usually comes back to haunt you, he's made it not haunt you in some of those instances. So that's been good. I'd like to see him continue getting time in right field. But again, you need bats at the bottom of that lineup. And Keenan Bowman has shown in the beginning of the year that he's capable of, putting up some good at-bats, getting some hits, and he moves pretty well too. And I think that's another thing you want at the bottom of the lineup. And so Keenan Bowman stepped up. I want to see Walker Barron take another step, but I think Barron's had good at-bats again lately. So it's definitely not all doom and gloom.
Any
storylines you want to hit on, Scott?
It's all doom and gloom. I watched the Reds lose
Doomer
3-1 games this week, and then the Pirates get swept on the weekend. Baseball sucks, and I hate it. No, but I do agree. You have a get right week this week. I think with State and Charlotte, those are very important games. Obviously, if it goes bad, the season feels like it's almost over until the conference tournament. But you just talked about this. When I was in school during the BG years, and we beat South Carolina to win a super regional, and it was a fantastic feeling. But during those years, this type of season wouldn't be as disappointing as it is. Yeah, you got swept at home, but you're still one game out of first in the conference. You're still well over 500. You're still, a team that's going to maybe get an at-large. whatever it might be. But the transformation of the program under Cliff Godwin, the expectation is no longer make the tournament. It's host a region, right? And I think that's what we look to every year. It's the reason that we sell so many season tickets is because people buy them thinking that at the end of the year, there's the payoff of now I have seats to see East Carolina host a regional in Clark LeClaire Stadium, or even host a super regional in Clark LeClaire Stadium, which when I was in school and we hosted for the first time ever, it was like the coolest thing that could possibly happen. And then we did it 4 years in a row under Cliff. It's really impressive. So we are holding their feet to the fire because we know what this program is capable of. And, things have changed over the last couple of years with the portal and NIL and all of that. But this program is still very much capable of being a top 25 team. It has the resources. So that's why we feel this way. And that's why we're passionate about it. That's why we have this podcast. If we were UAB, no one would be watching as I wear their colors. So
sweet hat, though, I got to say, with the Masters coming up.
It is Masters
awesome.
week.
Yeah. Masters week. All right, 23 games left. If the Pirates win all 23, Keith LeClaire, will they be hosting a regional?
We'll be hosting a super. I think we've established if you win 23 games in a row, you just get to host. You're a top 8. It's just that's how it works.
Let's do it.
Fairfield that one year that was 40-0. They didn't lose until right at the end of the season, and they were RPI 1 all year, and they were just not included in the conversation at all because they played. It was 21 or something like that. It was the COVID years. They had only played 4-game weekends against small northeastern schools. But
I remember that. I think they would do the Texas regional and put a big scare into some teams. So 43-13, boys. You heard it here first. Pirates went out and will host as the top 8 seed.
7 seed.
Yep. All right. Let's look ahead to the week ahead. Again, NC State, 54th in the RPI, coming off a dramatic series winner of Virginia, hit a walk-off home run. They can swing the bat, as always, inconsistent on the mound. Pretty typical NC State team. Charlotte after the midweek, the Pirates will head to Robert and Miriam Hayes Stadium on Saturday, Sunday. The Friday game will be at Truist Field.
No TV, by the way.
No TV?
On Friday, I don't believe. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure I saw that.
What a clown program to not have television for your baseball game. Maybe your biggest game of the year at home.
Are y'all going to Charlotte?
I will not be, unfortunately.
My wife is running a half marathon, so I will be at home with the son.
I mean, come on now. Just make her run her half marathon in Charlotte.
I think she's going to
the
beach. I think she likes the flat.
I will be.
Okay, I'm going to correct myself real quick. I swear I saw something where the Friday game will not be on TV, but according to the ECU schedule, it is on ESPN Plus. So I apologize for the heart attack I just gave everybody.
I stand by the clown program comment.
I support you.
They're going to come after you, all 3 Charlotte baseball fans. The Friday and Saturday game, my plan, weather permitting, is to be in attendance. I'm actually going to a Disturbed concert in Charlotte on Saturday night at Spectrum Center, and so I was like, I want to be there anyway. Might as well cover some baseball too. I want to go to Truist Field, and I don't really care to go to Charlotte Stadium, but I guess I will. I'll be there, so might as well. And so looking forward to that. So week ahead, guys, 4 tough games, 4 top 100 RPI games. Again, a chance to, I don't want to say get right because it's not good competition, but a chance to bounce back for sure. If you win 3 out of 4 this week, you feel pretty good. So we'll go predictions here first. What do you guys got? We'll start with Wags.
Yeah, Tuesday scares me, and partly because it's going to be cold. And we saw how this team we kept saying the first couple of weeks, I think this team's going to get a lot better offensively once the weather gets warmer. And it did for a little bit, but, I'm worried about the weather dropping, not being so warm, but who knows? Maybe that'll be the shakeup this team needs. But Tuesday scares me. State's a good team. They can hit. They will make you pay for those mistakes. And I don't trust ECU not to make them. So I don't think you beat State. And I also think that's a huge atmosphere type game. And this team hasn't performed well in big atmospheres, and even if it's at home. So I don't I think it's going to be a good game, though. I don't think we're going to go out and get 14-1 blown out. But I think it'll be a tight game. State probably pulls away late. But so 0-1 heading into the weekend, and I think you win the series. I think you go 2-1 to kind of get back on track there, and you'll take that for sure. But it all depends on how Tuesday goes down. And this whole week, to me, it's obviously you need at a bare minimum, you have to go 2-2. If you go 1-3 or God forbid 0-4, everything is over outside of the conference tournament. But I think the manner in which you do things this week is just as important. I think if you go 2-2 and you lose a tight game to State, and maybe you lose a pitcher's duel to Charlotte's Friday guy who's really good, you can live with that because that means you found a way to win on Saturday and Sunday, carry momentum into next week. So I'm going to have 2-2, but again, I really think it's important on how each of these games goes, dependent on the result.
Scott?
I'm going to go 1-3. I think tomorrow night you'll see a very high-scoring game. Bet the over there. State's bats are just really good. I mean, if they had any pitching at all, they would be very much in the top 25, maybe even contending for a national seed type team. They're kind of like us. I think they're better overall, but their bats have a lot of pop. They play mediocre defense, and then their pitching is just inconsistent. Then I think you'll see a super motivated Charlotte team. I remember the Sunday game against Charlotte where they came back and won last year. They got that win, so that gives them some belief going into this year. They're at home. They have a really good Friday night guy. It's going to be a tough atmosphere on Friday. And then this team on Sundays this year, I just don't think they performed well enough outside of the Virginia Tech game. I think we win Saturday, and then Sunday is just a back and forth game like it was this weekend. And we just haven't shown the ability to come through in the clutch. So I'll go 1-3. I think I went with a poor week earlier this year, and they went the other way with it. So hopefully that happens again. But yeah, right now I just need to see this team do it against somebody who is going to fight back.
Yeah, typically in this series, the home team performs well, and ECU hasn't been good at home this year. So I agree. Even though the weather won't be great, I still think it'll be a good atmosphere. NC State has hit 44 home runs, 286 as a team. Pitching, as you guys said, not great, but still been solid. I do think somebody brings up the point that they play Louisville this weekend, so we'll probably see a myriad of lower-tier arms for them, and that could play in ECU's favor. But I don't know who ECU's going to throw. Pruitt's probably out. Shirley's out. He threw 80-something pitches on Sunday. Ethan Young, I don't know if you'll see him. You'll probably see Jake Hunter. I don't know who's going to start.
This is not my bold prediction, but I'm going to predict Sean Jenkins will start.
Okay. I don't hate that. Jenkins, honestly, his stuff looked better. Has looked better the last few times. He's finally getting some swing and miss that we saw in the preseason. And, gosh, please make some plays behind him.
Please.
I can't do it. I can't talk about the defense. But anyways, I'm going to loss. ECU's got to prove to me they can win this type of game. And until they do, I can't take them in the spot. And then Charlotte, I do think we'll see a motivated Charlotte team, but I think ECU – I agree with Wise. I think ECU will play well against State, but just will lose. And then I do think they win 2 out of 3. So I'm going 2-2. And I think Norby outpitches their Friday night guy, and the Pirates find a way to steal one of the other games. So I'm going 2-2. So we'll see what happens. Last stand type week it feels like for ECU as far as at-large hopes. Jeff Neal says walk-off win Tuesday. Norby Friday goes 13 Ks, big win. Well, that would get the guys fired up. Bold predictions. I don't even remember what I had last week. I think Irby 2 homers. Or was that the week before? Does that sound right?
Is it over here? Hold on.
Either way, I didn't hit it.
Well, I said Braden Burris would hit for the cycle on the week, and he was limited to only singles. So
Igo had
Still a
2
dog.
homer week for Irby. We all went 3-2, and they went 2-3. So that was rough, but
It looked good to start the week. No, I don't think any of us thought they would win both midweek games.
no, definitely not. And then I
So
had Braxton and Braden for 12 RBIs, and I don't know what they ended at, but it was probably like 5 or 6.
yeah, both of them are still dogs, though. I will say that it's just nobody's on base when they're doing things. Yeah, did Braxton Trammell hit the absolute shit out of that one ball?
yes, he
And
did.
if I could say that, I forgot it. It's just a podcast. Bold predictions for this week. Are we feeling bold at all? Does anybody got anything ready to go?
I have no idea where I'm going.
Scott, do you got anything ready?
I'm going to go that 2 homer week for both Braxton and Braden this week.
You're just gonna stay on the Braxton and Braden.
I'm on the Bras. I gotta figure out a way to get Bowman mixed in there. 'Cause I feel like those 3 guys really are your core, and if you keep those 3 here, 2 years from now, they'll be a very special team. But I'm big on Braxton and Braden right now.
All right, I'm gonna go with Colby Wallace. Will have 2 saves this week. He's got 2 for the season. I'm gonna say he gets 2 saves this week. Wags.
Yeah, I'm between a lot. I thought about a Jake Hunter related. I thought about an Austin Irby related, but since Igo went Irby last week, I am going to spread the wealth around a little bit. And for those of you who know me, this might come as a surprise to you, but I am predicting
Roger
that
Vergara home run.
absolutely not.
Lead up spot, home run for Roger Vergara.
But you're close. Davin Whitaker will hit a home run this week. I think it's going to come on Tuesday, but the bold prediction will be he will hit a home run this week.
Davin Whitaker, second career home run is what? Because he hit one earlier this year, right? Yeah, the walk-off.
Yeah, off the foul pole, I think.
Yeah. All right. Scott Jackson says Dixon at least 2 home runs. I do feel like Dixon is a streaky power hitter, so I could see that after going yard on Sunday. Dustin Bell says Boucher, Burris, Bowman, and Barron will all hit bombs.
I like that.
That's a lot of B's.
I almost went with a Bowman homer. I was between those 2.
If all those dudes hit bombs, it's going to be a good week for ECU. I can tell you that. So that would be very, very productive. All right, guys, we are out of time. We've gone over an hour. I would say fun show, but I don't know if it's been that fun, but it's been, I feel like, pretty constructive. We've gotten some good talking points out, a lot of good participation, over 700 viewers. So appreciate everybody watching live. As always, be sure if you missed any of it, check out the podcast. That'll drop late tonight into the morning. Take you into first pitch tomorrow. We'll have coverage on Hoist the Colors. Wags, Scott, appreciate you guys as always. Thanks for always providing some great insight.
Do your Masters predictions to close the show?
Gosh, you guys are more golf guys than me, so I'll let y'all go
Colin
first.
Morikawa.
See, I will say this is a sleeper, and I will admit that I'm only picking this guy because I have a coworker whose last day is today, and his kind of his party message for us was that Russell Henley will win the Masters. So that's my guy this week.
Russ Henley Masters.
Plus 5,500. Because I put a bet in as soon as he dropped that message when I left work today.
5,500.
All right, there are your master picks from those guys. I'm going to go Brooks Koepka to win the Masters as I was going to go Scotty Scheffler, but that just feels too easy. So
Brooks Koepka, a solid prep baseball player too. So fits the
there you
bill.
go. Maybe he can also play baseball for the Pirates this week and help them out while winning the Masters. All right, we will be back next Monday, 9 p.m. Who knows? Maybe we'll be having a show about is an at-large bid back on the menu. If the Pirates go 3-1, and Roger
Please.
Vergara hits a home run, Wags will not appear on the show because he will have dropped dead from a heart attack. We'll see you then. It's been fun. Till next time.